Zerapatos, sorry if I butchered your name, rewatched the One Ring solo games you made, and that inspired me to run a collaborative solo game on my Lord of the Rings Online Guild Discord server. Where we're using polls on Discord to play. That's cool.
Yeah.
I used to love that game, Lord of the Rings Online.
I played it a bit, yeah. It was interesting because I liked how you were basically like the B team. Like, Aragorn and Boromir and like all those guys were like the A team, and you were like the other guys that were sent out to do the other shit, like alongside them, but like in different parts of the world. It was interesting.
Yeah, they did a good job. At least for what it was, like keeping to the kind of story game element of it. But I enjoyed that game. I sometimes I reinstall it and I play it for like 20 minutes, and then I'm like, I love this game, but I don't have the time for it, and then I discard it.
Yeah. If you don't mind getting a bit more railroady and all that stuff, that wouldn't actually be a bad premise for like a Lord of the Rings campaign. It's like, yeah, you're like the other dudes that are sent out to deal with shit that the Fellowship doesn't have time for.
Yeah, and I can't wait. I know the Moria books went out, and people on the Gilded server on the supporter side, or what was it, Crossface and Oma were like,
yeah,
all right, John, word is on the street that there's going to be a One Ring 2E campaign, or at least a one shot, and you're going to run it. And I'm like, I am? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I am.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I gotta get ready for that. And it's funny though too, because I've been on this like prep thing, like not anti-prep, but just like talking about seat of the pants gaming. And I will freely admit that that the One Ring 2E is not a game that I have mastered. So it's something I'm probably gonna have to, at least for like a one shot, I'm gonna have to put a little prep into, at least a little bit more than I normally do, in order to make it good. So,
well, it's like I've always said, like we don't run D&D the same way we run, like like in this example, the One Ring. Like you have to take each game at its own merit, and some games you might have to prep more than others, and that's fine.
Yeah,
we never said that zero prep is like all you should do, and that's like the only way.
Yeah. But people don't know how to read, so they think that's what I said. But I have Strider mode. I want to print that up because I wish they had like a print version of that. But Strider mode is the solo game rules, and I thought like I could use that to pretty much to pretty much zero prep One Ring campaign. But even then, like I have a pretty good knowledge. Like I'm a Tolkien fan. I read a lot of Tolkien. I'm still reading a lot of Tolkien. I just finished reading The Hobbit to my daughter. She loved it, but before bedtime, now she told me she wants to know what happens to Frodo, because I told her like the next adventure is Bilbo's nephew Frodo, and she's like, "Well, Daddy, we got to read it." Like, all right, and so I know a lot of the lore. I read a lot of the stuff, but I'm still gonna have to go back and revisit things within the rule book itself, because it's one of those games. It's like I tell people that ask me about it, I'm like, the One Ring, when you actually sit down and look at it, it's like a deceptively crunchy
system
story game. Like it's a story game, it has its story game elements, but it's like kind of crunchy actually. So Matt here, Paladin, he says that werewolf wouldn't let us rest when we played him. Yeah, you almost got carried off. I was purposely trying to kill your character. Not trying to kill your character, but I was playing the bad guys like they're bad guys. And his character, so it still has like the death saves, like you have to roll 3 death saves, but it's one of those things where I feel like as a GM, where I don't know if other GMs do this, but like these are wild. Like there was a werewolf, the werewolf of Mirkwood, with a bunch of like evil wolves, just regular wolves with him, and Matt's character here got taken out. He got down to 0 hit points. He was doing his death saves, and I had like one of the wolves trying to drag him off into the forest. his unconscious body into the forest, and the Vic and the other guys had to like chase down the wolf that was dragging their buddy off and kill it. So luckily they're able to. But if his character had been dragged off unconscious into the woods by like a wolf, he just would have been dead. You just got
Yeah.
eaten. Like
Yep.
your death saves didn't matter. You got eaten. So
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed that game. I also enjoyed the follow-up that we did in the One Wing. We should probably get back to that at some point. But yeah, and even that one's fairly lethal. Like Wob got like stabbed by goblins, and he's like poisoned and stuff like that. He's got like blood poisoning and shit.
yeah,
He's like horribly sick. Last time we stopped playing.
yeah. So I like this one. Someone had made a comment here. How do you run a Lord of the Rings game? I think like you need a rule set for it first, and
Yeah.
I will say that D&D on its own, you could probably try to make a Lord of the Rings game out of like any of the D&D rules. Like obviously we were talking about Adventures in Middle Earth that uses 5e, but I don't think that Dungeons and Dragons is built in the same way as what
No.
you need to run a Tolkien-esque game, which is like very heavy on journeys. And
we actually did the last one shots on this exact topic. We
Yeah.
actually
Oh, yeah?
talked. Yeah, we actually talked exactly what you need to do to run a Lord of the Rings games, and if D&D on its own is like good for it. And in my opinion, unless you have like all the right tables, unless the random tables and everything is exactly curated to like Middle Earth, D&D isn't really the right game for at least for Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit, like something like the Hobbits, you might be able to manage because the Hobbit is basically just a pure D&D adventure. Something as Lord of the Rings, you need a specific game for it. And in my opinion, you need to do at least a little bit of railroading. I don't quite think you can get the right feel by just doing sandbox.
But I think that's one of those games. It's one of like this is one of those games where I feel like you kind of go into it knowing that it's a modern game that leans a little bit more into it has to be a railroad thing, but I think you as the referee, the game master, know you need to do that, and the players know that you need to do that too. So, like the players are generally on board with it because you sort of give them something like there's a warg camp and goblins to the north, and they're pillaging the countryside, and we don't know who their commander or chief is, and we need you to go investigate. The players are like, cool, let's go do it. Generally, if your players are good, they'll be like, that's what needs to get done right now because we're heroes in Middle Earth. So
well, it's fine to start. It's fine to start with the whole like, yeah, we're just a band of mercenaries that are hiring on to be like guards for like this riverboat. But then it is going to lead into something more concrete. That's what that Adventures of Middle Earth thing you were running, the Mirkwood campaign. We just hired on to like protect this caravan. But obviously, that campaign is going to lead into like investigating the rise of the necromancer and like all this shit.
Yeah.
So that it does force you down certain paths. And I think to have a proper Lord of the Rings game with like the proper feel, to have like that epic feel, you kind of need to do that. That's just something you have to live with.
Yeah, because like the difference between like D&D is D&D has its Appendix N, which has Tolkien is a part of that, but there's also like lots of different. It's emulating a lot of different kind of games that are in that Appendix N, not just Tolkien's work. So that's what leads it to a more just like it's a sandbox dungeon crawl, go through the underworld. I know it's the underworld.
Yeah.
I'm going to make people mad with that still, but
I made somebody mad earlier about that.
Yeah. So it kind of leans into lots of different things and can be lots of different things. Whereas something like The One Ring or Adventures in Middle Earth, like you're focusing in on 3% of what Appendix N is.
Yeah.
So it's like 100% Tolkien. So
Yeah.
Tolkien wrote novels, stories about like characters that are generally good. Like you can't really be not a hero in a Lord of the Rings campaign, right? Like you can't. I mean, you could try to be, I guess, but like your character's probably not going to last long if he's kind of a scumbag.
Yeah,
because that's just not what his stories were about. So
well, that's what I meant by you have to take every game and every setting on its own merits, and you have to run them how they demand to be run. And that's the one mistake that people make a lot is like when they hear us talk about like random tables, about reaction walls and stuff, they think that we're talking about the hobby in general, that you have to like do everything like that. It's like, no, we're talking about this specific subset of like old school D&D. because
Mhm.
I won a lot of modern stuff. I won like stuff about like bank robbers doing like heat style like robberies. That's not a sandbox. That's like literally like, yeah, you're gonna go to this bank today, try to get the money, and try to survive the SWAT team that's showing up. Like
Yeah.
that's not a sandbox. That's not random encounters. That's not reaction walls. That's like a very like curated like kind of like one shot mission. So, yeah, but that's the kind of game I won with that. But then I won old school essentials, then I'm on a hex map doing random rolls. So
So Zonalar, I don't know if I butchered your name. Sorry if I did. What strikes me, a Lord of the Ring game needs players to co-create the inciting incident that gets the group to accept the call to adventure. And yeah, you gave the example of like Samwise hearing overhearing a secret talks of a wizard and Frodo, and then now he's dragged along on this adventure.
yeah,
Um, that's part of it too, but like there's also just this concept of duty that's in Lord of the Rings, right? Like Frodo is just a hobbit, he's just a halfling, he's a nobody, but he's like, the ring came to me and I have a duty now, and I have to fulfill
yeah,
that duty. Um,
yeah. And he's been inspired by like the tales of his uncle, and yeah,
Yeah. So like he doesn't want to go on this adventure, but he has a duty. Like Aragorn is like, I don't really want you read the Lord of the Rings, and Aragorn's like, being a king isn't something he's seeking. It's like this
no,
is a duty that I have to do. It's a
yeah,
responsibility that I don't really want to take on. Like if he probably had a choice, he wouldn't take it on. But
no,
he's like, I'm gonna seek out the kingship and return as the king because Osgiliath needs it, Gondor needs it. So, you
yeah,
know, that's kind of I think there's this. You have to lean into this concept of duty as well as that. I think.
yeah.